Joining us now in studio is Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Nice to see you, my friend. Okay, so you've been paying close attention to our latest live trial playing out there. This is a fascinating case involving a lot of moving parts. What can you tell us?
Well, good afternoon, Matt. Always great to see you and be on set with you here today. On the witness stand so far today, a series of law enforcement officials who are assigned to Collin Griffith's case. The court has also heard audio of the 911 call Collin made after the incident occurred.
What caused the bleeding? She got real tight and we won't give you the knife and she fell on it. Where is the knife right now? And who did she get in the fight with? We got to for a long time and then she got on top of me and fell on it.
Per his request, Collin left the courtroom while the state presented the 911 call for the jury. A forensic investigator also took the stand today and told the court that Collin had no emotions during her interaction with him following the altercation between him and his mother, Catherine.
When you came into contact with the defendant, how would you describe his demeanor?
He was emotionless.
Emotionless?
Yes.
Did that change at all while you interacted with him?
No.
We're going to move on now. Approximately how many minutes do you think that you were with the defendant?
Probably about 20 to 30 minutes.
During those 20 to 30 minutes, did his demeanor change from being emotionless at all?
No, he remained the same.
Another detective also took the stand this morning, and under cross-examination, she admitted to learning more about Catherine's violent past, which included stabbing her former husband.
You came to learn quite a bit about everyone's background, right?
Yes.
Okay, especially Kathy.
Yes.
And did you actually seek out information about Kathy's past in your efforts to provide resources to both her and to Collin?
In the beginning, yes.
So you became aware of some prior involvement that Kathy had with DCF, right?
Yes.
And it's fair to say that in most, if not all, of those prior DCF involvements, it involved Kathy being violent or aggressive towards other family members.
Yes.
And many of her actions that caused DCF to become involved were committed in front of her children.
Most of them that I recall, yes.
And in fact, her kids were taken away from her, were sheltered from her at times, correct?
I don't recall those specifics, but...
Would it surprise you?
No.
And you're also aware that Kathy had been arrested before?
Yes.
Specifically for an incident that involved her stabbing her then husband in front of 10-year-old Collin?
Yes.
And again, Matt, witnesses today so far all have been detectives, investigators, and other members of law enforcement. One detective also told the court Collin made statements about killing his mother on several occasions.
Yeah, this is a really tragic case playing out there. I mean, you have the loss of these two parents maybe trying to intervene, but it's such a tumultuous environment for the family members. Cody Thomas, thank you so much for your reporting. We'll check in with you later today. To discuss, let's bring in our guest for this hour, civil rights and family attorney Tangi Bush. Let's begin with the 911 call. As Cody just reported, this defendant was granted permission to leave the courtroom. We don't usually see that. During a piece of evidence presented before the jury. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I take into account the defendant's age. He is still 17, obviously on trial for something extremely heinous in the accusation. So I think that there were probably some dialogue between both parties, prosecution, defendant, and the bench. And maybe there were agreements that during parts of the trial, perhaps he could take a break or be removed from spaces that made him further uncomfortable or would agitate him because, again, he is 17 years old, regardless of the accusation. I also have not seen a defendant removed during portions of the trial, especially when it's his voice on the tape. It's not something that he's not privy to necessarily. So that was unique, but I think that this is also a very unique case in all of its facts and all of the players, including this last bit of information that we just learned as well. So
yeah, and a good example of that, not being allowed to be removed during a piece of evidence that you may not like or agree with, is Lori Vallow Daybell in the state of Idaho, when she wanted to not see the autopsy photos of the children, and the judge said, well, you're on trial, you're going to stay here and watch and look at all the evidence. I do want to move on to, though, the promise by the defense during opening statements and what they were talking about in character evidence of the mom and her background and behavior. And I want to get your reaction on the other side of this.
You're going to hear that Kathy not only wanted to cause harm to her own self, but Kathy has threatened or done harm to other people. You'll hear some of those details about some of the things that she actually did to another person in front of Collin, involving weapons. You will hear that she has threatened to kill different people at different times and actually taken steps towards completing that wish. You also hear that Kathy is not exactly reliable in what she says. You'll hear this from her own mother, that she makes things up, that she is unpredictable, she is erratic, and goes into rages.
So the defense promise made in opening statements was a promise kept today, because we had a witness on the stand in Cody Thomas's reporting that told this jury about prior bad acts by the decedent in all of this, stabbing her husband.
Right. So the interesting things about trials like this, all of the facts are going to come in and all of the stories are going to be told. And so what I think is interesting, of course, is right now we are trying to piece together who the victim actually was, and what the nature of the relationship was between her and her son, the defendant. And of course, they have delivered on that promise. Again, I don't know that it's completely surprising or shocking to hear some of these things, but in other words, what the testimony that was just given, literally we're hearing that she has a very violent past, has threatened family members, etc. And of course, this is not the picture that the prosecution has painted. And it also will contribute to what happened on the day in which, unfortunately, the incident that led us here occurred. So I think that all of these things have to be considered. And of course, they have fully delivered at this point on the promise of showing us a different side of how the victim has been painted previously.
Well, you know what? They are claiming self-defense on this one, or at least he is. And he claimed that the first time when he killed his dad. No charges brought in that case yet. But in this case, he claims self-defense. Do you see a case in chief by the defense if they don't put on this defendant to talk to the jury there in the state of Florida? Doesn't he have to testify?
I think that in order for him to now we're getting to the point where we are seeing that it seems that everybody in this conversation has been violent somehow, some way, with the exception, of course, of the father. We're not going to involve him in this because that was a previous case that wasn't brought for different reasons. So looking at the victim being painted as this very violent person, I think we might actually have to hear from the defendant in some way, because again, the defense of falling on a knife, that's very hard to overcome, especially given the violent struggle that was described beforehand. So we might not. As these days go by and more trial testimony comes out, it gets even when we go into this rabbit hole of this is a very troubling space and a very troubling case.
Very uncomfortable case for these jurors to have to consider and see all of this evidence, including video of this defendant. So maybe that'll be another reason why he takes the stand.